Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com, the podcast and website about reimagining your life. Thanks for joining me today to talk about, well, being more creative, one vegetable at a time. Let's get started and I'll explain. If you like what you hear tonight, please leave me a like, send me a message. Thanks for joining me tonight to talk about perhaps, how to make your solutions a bit more creative and maybe even better aligned with your vision. But first, some background. First, I want to apologize. It was a gorgeous day out today. We had a bunch of rain from the previous days, and the day was very, very pretty. And so I just got walking a little farther than I had expected. So we're running a little late tonight. So thank you for your patience. But, um, you know, a little background. Life is pretty much like everything. I mean, my life especially, nothing is kind of linear to get from here to there. Everything is kind of a lengthwise journey. It wanders around, and I finally get to where I'm going. But yesterday I wrote a whole set of notes to talk about basically managing conflicting visions and conflicting goals, and that's what tonight was going to be about. But and that's important stuff, but it wasn't destined to be tonight. And I always kind of laugh when people say they have writer's block, because if you're at all like me, the real problem is which of the 10,000 ideas you currently have in your head should you use. But for those few times when and even if I can't pick something to work on, I find if I just stop trying to think about the problem, slow down for a couple minutes, go for a walk, then my head is full of ideas again. So I had a bunch of things I was working on besides the podcast, and I took part of the day off to help write some grant applications for the church. And kind of an aside, this is why I always tell people, both personally and through the podcast, that I always recommend to try and always keep learning, always keep taking courses, whatever. Because through my community college, in here where we are, I had access, and I think I still do, to an online course platform called Ed2Go, ED2GO. And the courses are taught by real live people, which is kind of neat. And although most of your interaction is via written documentation, it's not really online learning per se. It's not like you're watching videos. But if you learn well from written sources, and they're all very much very pragmatic hands-on courses, some are programming courses and things like that. But I find it really nice if you learn, like I say, from written stuff. And I think it's really handy because it's awesome. You can always just message with the teacher for feedback. And so it's nice, but it's not like they have to pay teachers to sit and do, real courses all the time. And the other nice part about it is rather than watching a video all the time where maybe the sound isn't great or something like that, you can sit and study at your own pace at any time of day or night and then write the teacher and get an answer usually within a few hours back if you have a question or something on the homework or something like that. So I really like it, and I really recommend to everybody, you just keep trying to do that sort of stuff, always just learning things. So I have a few certificates through Ed2Go, and one of the most recent was, as it happened, Introduction to Grant Writing. And I knew it would come in handy at some point, and that particular point was now in time. So I'm cruising through the first grant, which of course, is due mere seconds from now. And I'm speaking with someone else about the progress, and they say, we could always ask for a grant to develop that side lot over there into a free community garden. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. We have subsidized housing right behind the church, and the nearest real grocery store is truly on the other side of town. And there used to be one across the creek just about a mile or so away, walking distance, and now that's something else. So I started looking into that whole concept of community gardens, and in the course of looking through things, came across someone I had seen before. I forgot who it was, but he turns out shall we call him a kind of a militant guerrilla gardener, and his name is Ron Finley, and he grew up in South Central LA, and obviously most South Central LA is a bad part of town, in a complete food desert. And although he's a clothing designer, he says for him, the soil is his canvas and the plants are what he creates his images with. So he figures I think that the common figure is 26 million people in the US currently live in a food desert. And I'm not sure how that's exactly defined, but it's difficult at least to get good food within a reasonable distance. In his case, right in LA, it was a 45-minute round trip drive to the nearest store that had, in his case, he said, I was just looking for an apple that wasn't covered in pesticides. And it took almost an hour just to get there and get back. So in South Central where he lives, He said people are roughly 5 times more likely to be obese compared to Beverly Hills, which is only a few miles away. And at that time, I think that I was watching a TED talk from him just before this. Another reason I'm a little later because it was a good TED talk. And but he said LA owned over 26 square miles of vacant lots, which he finally convinced them to use at least some of to use them for community gardens. And for reference, 26 square miles is over 20 times the size of Central Park in New York City. If you've ever seen a picture of that, Central Park is actually huge. It's many blocks long, a few blocks wide. It's a big area, and this is over 20 times that amount of space. And as he rather wittily points out, that much land is capable of supporting over 724 million tomato plants. And you say, okay, well, that's all interesting, that's kind of neat, but where's this leading to? Well, the moral is that by looking at the vision, which in this case was to provide healthy aid, and this is actually the grant requirement, to provide healthy aid to the local community, especially those who struggle financially. Suddenly, new options became visible. I mean, I already had 4 grant proposal ideas, and they're all still valid. I'll probably try and submit them all. But some of them were kind of more passive for the recipients, and some of them were longer term. But by not focusing on my ideas, but rather keeping an open mind and thinking out loud about the vision, talking with someone else, the idea of the community garden came up, and it clearly leapt to the front of the pack, right? It's just far and away better. And because not only is it somewhat less expensive, there'll be some cost because the land needs remediation to be usable, but the community has to be actively involved for it to succeed. So everyone gets to contribute and to literally enjoy the fruits of the success. It also automatically requires cooperation of all the people. So it makes it harder for things like fights and all that isolation, this building versus that building, whatever, all the stupid things that people always find a reason to divide themselves up by. It makes that harder because you're all working for the same goal and you have to cooperate or else it's not going to succeed. No one's going to win. But insofar as our little community online here, the biggest takeaway for me is that by focusing on the vision and not necessarily even the next expected goal, new ideas and opportunities are allowed to arise and bring you further than you had expected. Relatedly, very often, one of the best ways to be creative is to tell or explain or teach to someone else what you're working towards. There's something about explaining or teaching that really engages your mind's creativity. So even if you think you have a really great solution, try to explain it to somebody else, and chances are you'll end up with something even more amazing than you expected. So just a short thing tonight. I was so excited about it. But that's it for the evening. I hope the next time you're thinking about a creative solution, you remember to not get too fixated upon the obvious next goal, but to allow your creativity to work and to work with others, and perhaps bring you to an even higher level than you expected. Your homework, always optional, is to think about some recent tasks that you hadn't completed and solved, but now reframe it, or perhaps even revisit with someone else and see if a different solution might arise that perhaps is even more aligned with your vision or a little more creative. Extra points if you take the next task that you're considering doing and do that same exercise. Write down what seems like one or more good solutions, then casually discuss them with someone else and see if you either end up with a better solution or more confidence than ones you've already discovered. So that's it for tonight. As always, remember just the war in Ukraine, in Israel, Palestine, other places in the world. Things are kind of a mess. The weekend was really not a good weekend, obviously, on many different reasons, from a peace in the world standpoint. And also, always mention worldcentralkitchen.org, currently not operating in Palestine, although they're still in Ukraine. World Central Kitchen are the people that deliver food, usually food locally obtained whenever possible, just to use local resources, help support the local economy. UKR7.com are resources that support places in Ukraine. We talk about this a lot, that when you look outside yourself to the rest of the world, it really changes your perspective on the world and your perspective on other people. That we tend, and particularly these days in the U.S., get encouraged to look very much inwards. What's in this for me now? Whatever. What's the next thing that I can do? But by looking outside yourself, it's what we always talk about. Remember, one of the best ways to care for yourself is to care for others. It changes your whole viewpoint of the world. It really does make a difference. And so if you can and you're able, please, donate to one of the many causes. And donating, doesn't have to be with money. It can be with time. And if you don't have the time or the money, even a little thing. You meet somebody on the street as you're walking by, just smile, just say hi. Somebody looks like they're having a down day, say, hey, how's it going? Hope things go better. Whatever, just something to bring a little bit of joy into somebody else. Makes a huge difference. As always, thank you for stopping by. If you found something interesting and useful, please pass it along and please hit that like button. And if not, please drop me a comment as to what you'd like to hear. Have a great week. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path that you contentment. Love and encouragement to everyone. See you next week on 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com. Thank you.